It had been her request to Phillotson that he should not meet her. She wished, she said, to come to him voluntarily to his very house and hearthstone. It was Friday evening, which had been chosen because the schoolmaster was disengaged at 4 o'clock that day till the Monday morning following. The little car she hired at the Bear to drive her to Mary Green set her down at the end of the lane, 1/2 a mile from the village, by her desire, and preceded her to the schoolhouse with such portion of her luggage as she had brought. On its return she encountered it, and asked the driver if he had found the master's house open. The man informed her that he had, and that her things had been taken in by the schoolmaster himself. She could now enter Mary Green without exciting much observation. She crossed by the wall and under the trees to the pretty new school on the other side, and lifted the latch of the dwelling without knocking. Phillotson stood in the middle of the room, awaiting her, as requested. "I've come, Richard," said she, looking pale and shaken, and sinking into a chair. "I cannot believe you forgive your wife." "Everything, darling Susanna," said Phillotson. She started at the endearment, though it had been spoken advisedly without further. Then she nerved herself again. "My children are dead, and it is right that they should be. I am glad, almost. They were sin-begotten. They were sacrificed to teach me how to live. Their death was the first stage of my purification. That's why they have not died in vain. You will take me back?" He was so stirred by her pitiful words and tone that he did more than he had meant to do. He bent and kissed her cheek. Sue imperceptibly shrank away, her flesh quivering under the touch of his lips. Phillotson's heart sank, for desire was renascent in him. "You still have an aversion to me?" "Oh, no, dear, I have been driving through the damp and I was chilly," she said, with a hurried smile of apprehension. "When are we going to have the marriage? Soon?" "Tomorrow morning. Early, I thought, if you really wish. I am sending round to the vicar to let him know you are come. I have told him all, and he highly approves. He says it will bring our lives to a triumphant and satisfactory issue. But are you sure of yourself? It is not too late to refuse now, if you think you can't bring yourself to it, you know." Yes, I can. I want it done quick. Tell him at once. My strength is tried by the undertaking. I can't wait long." "Have something to eat and drink, then, and go over to your room at Mrs. Edlin's. I'll tell the vicar 8:30 tomorrow, before anybody is about, if that's not too soon for you. My friend Gillingham is here to help us in the ceremony. He's been good enough to come all the way from Shaston at great inconvenience to himself." Unlike a woman in ordinary, whose eye is so keen for material things, Sue seemed to see nothing of the room they were in or any detail of her environment. But on moving across the parlour to put down her muff, she uttered a little "Oh!" and grew paler than before. Her look was that of the condemned criminal who catches sight of his coffin. "What?" said Phillotson. The flap of the bureau chanced to be open, and in placing her muff upon it, her eye had caught a document which lay there. "Oh, only a funny surprise," she said, trying to laugh away her cry as she came back to the table. "Ah, yes," said Phillotson, "the licence. It has just come." Gillingham now joined them from his room above, and Sue nervously made herself agreeable to him by talking on whatever she thought likely to interest him, except herself, though that interested him most of all. She obediently ate some supper, and prepared to leave for her lodging hard by. Phillotson crossed the green with her, bidding her good night at Mrs. Edlin's door. The old woman accompanied Sue to her temporary quarters and helped her to unpack. Among other things, she laid out a nightgown, tastefully embroidered. "Oh, I didn't know that was put in," said Sue quickly. "I didn't mean it to be. Here is a different one." She handed a new and absolutely plain garment of coarse and unbleached calico. "But this is the prettiest," said Mrs. Edlin. "That one is no better than the very sackcloth of Scripture." "Yes, I meant it to be. Give me the other." She took it and began rending it with all her might, the tears resounding through the house like a screech owl. "But my dear, dear, whatever! It is adulterous. It signifies what I don't feel. I bought it long ago, to please Jude. It must be destroyed." Mrs. Edlin lifted her hands, and Sue excitedly continued to tear the linen into strips, laying the pieces in the fire. "You might ha' given it to me," said the widow. "It do make my heart ache to see such pretty open work as that a burned by the flames. Not that ornamental night rails can be much use to a old woman like I. My days for such be all past and gone." "It is an accursed thing. It reminds me of what I want to forget," Sue repeated. "It is only fit for the fire." "Lord, you be too strict. What do you use such words for, and condemn to hell your dear little innocent children that's lost to 'ee? 'Pon my life, I don't call that religion." Sue flung her face upon the bed, sobbing. "Oh, don't, don't! That kills me!" She remained shaken with her grief and slipped down upon her knees. "I'll tell 'ee what. You ought not to marry this man again," said Mrs. Edlin indignantly. "You are in love with t'other still." "Yes, I must. I am his already." "Shoo! You be t'other man's. If you didn't like to commit yourselves to the new binding vow again just at first, 'twas all the more credit to your consciences, considering your reasons, and you med ha' lived on and made it all right at last. After all, it concerned nobody but your own two selves." "Richard says he'll have me back, and I'm bound to go. If he had refused, it might not have been so much my duty to give up Jude, but—" She remained with her face in the bedclothes, and Mrs. Edlin left the room. Phillotson, in the interval, had gone back to his friend Gillingham, who still sat over the supper-table. They soon rose, and walked out on the green to smoke a while. A light was burning in Sue's room, a shadow moving now and then across the blind. Gillingham had evidently been impressed with the indefinable charm of Sue, and after a silence he said, "Well, you've all but got her again at last. She can't very well go a second time. The pear has dropped into your hand." "Yes, I suppose I am right in taking her at her word. I confess there seems a touch of selfishness in it. Apart from her being what she is, of course, a luxury for a fogey like me, it will set me right in the eyes of the clergy and orthodox laity, who have never forgiven me for letting her go, so I may get back in some degree into my old track." "Well, if you've got any sound reason for marrying her again, do it now, in God's name. I was always against your opening the cage door and letting the bird go in such an obviously suicidal way. You might have been a school inspector by this time, or a reverend, if you hadn't been so weak about her. I did myself irreparable damage, I know it. Once you've got her housed again, stick to her." Phillotson was more evasive tonight. He did not care to admit clearly that his taking Sue to him again had at bottom nothing to do with repentance of letting her go, but was, primarily, a human instinct flying in the face of custom and profession. He said, "Yes, I shall do that. I know woman better now. Whatever justice there was in releasing her, there was little logic for one holding my views on other subjects." Gillingham looked at him and wondered whether it would ever happen that the reactionary spirit induced by the world's sneers and his own physical wishes would make Phillotson more orthodoxly cruel to her than he had erstwhile been informally and perversely kind. "I perceive it won't do to give way to impulse," Phillotson resumed, feeling more and more every minute the necessity of acting up to his position. I flew in the face of the Church's teaching, but I did it without malice prepense. Women are so strange in their influence that they tempt you to misplaced kindness. However, I know myself better now. A little judicious severity, perhaps. Yes, but you must tighten the reins by degrees only. Don't be too strenuous at first. She'll come to any terms in time. The caution was unnecessary, though Phillotson did not say so. I remember what my vicar at Shaston said when I left after the row that was made about my agreeing to her elopement. The only thing you can do to retrieve your position and hers is to admit your error in not restraining her with a wise and strong hand, and to get her back again, if she'll come, and be firm in the future. But I was so headstrong at that time that I paid no heed, and that after the divorce she should have thought of doing so I did not dream. The gate of Mrs. Edlin's cottage clicked, and somebody began crossing in the direction of the school. Phillotson said, "Good night." "Oh, is that Mr. Phillotson?" said Mrs. Edlin. "I was going over to see 'ee. I've been upstairs with her, helping her to unpack her things, and upon my word, sir, I don't think this ought to be." "What, the wedding?" "Yes. She's forcing herself to do it, poor dear little thing, and you've no notion what she's suffering. I was never much for religion, nor against it, but it can't be right to let her do this, and you ought to persuade her out of it. Of course everybody will say it was very good and forgiving of 'ee to take her to 'ee again, but for my part I don't." "It's her wish, and I am willing," said Phillotson, with grave reserve, opposition making him illogically tenacious now. "A great piece of laxity will be rectified." "I don't believe it. She's his wife if anybody's. She's had 3 children by him, and he loves her dearly, and it's a wicked shame to egg her on to this, poor little quivering thing. She's got nobody on her side. The one man who'd be her friend, the obstinate creature won't allow to come near her. What first put her into this mood of mind, I wonder?" "I can't tell. Not I, certainly. It is all voluntary on her part. Now that's all I have to say." Phillotson spoke stiffly. "You've turned round, Mrs. Edlin. It is unseemly of you." "Well, I knowed you'd be affronted at what I had to say, but I don't mind that. The truth's the truth." "I'm not affronted, Mrs. Edlin. You've been too kind a neighbour for that. But I must be allowed to know what's best for myself and Susanna. I suppose you won't go to church with us, then?" "No. Be hanged if I can. I don't know what the times be coming to. Matrimony have growed to be that serious in these days that one really do feel afeard to move in it at all. In my time we took it more careless, and I don't know that we was any the worse for it. When I and my poor man were ginned in it, we kept up the junketing all week, and drunk the parish dry, and had to borrow £half-a-crown to begin housekeeping." When Mrs. Edlin had gone back to her cottage, Phillotson spoke moodily. "I don't know whether I ought to do it, at any rate quite so rapidly." "Why?" "If she really is compelling herself to this against her instincts, merely from this new sense of duty or religion, I ought perhaps to let her wait a bit. Now you've got so far, you ought not to back out of it. That's my opinion. I can't very well put it off now, that's true. But I had a qualm when she gave that little cry at sight of the license. Now, never you have qualms, old boy. I mean to give her away tomorrow morning, and you mean to take her. It has always been on my conscience that I didn't urge more objections to your letting her go, and now we've got to this stage, I shan't be content if I don't help you to set the matter right." Phillotson nodded, and seeing how staunch his friend was, became more frank. "No doubt when it gets known what I've done, I shall be thought a soft fool by many. But they don't know Sue as I do. Though so elusive, Hers is such an honest nature at bottom that I don't think she has ever done anything against her conscience. The fact of her having lived with Fawley goes for nothing. At the time she left me for him, she thought she was quite within her right. Now she thinks otherwise." The next morning came, and the self-sacrifice of the woman on the altar of what she was pleased to call her principles was acquiesced in by those two friends, each from his own point of view. Phillotson went across to the widow Edlin's to fetch Sue a few minutes after 8 o'clock. The fog of the previous day or two on the lowlands had travelled up here by now, and the trees on the green caught armfuls and turned them into showers of big drops. The bride was waiting, ready, bonnet and all on. She had never in her life looked so much like the lily her name connoted as she did in that pallid morning light. Chastened, world-weary, remorseful, the strain on her nerves had preyed upon her flesh and bones, and she appeared smaller in outline than she had formerly done, though Sue had not been a large woman in her days of rudest health. "Prompt," said the schoolmaster, magnanimously taking her hand, but he checked his impulse to kiss her, remembering her start of yesterday, which unpleasantly lingered on his mind. Gillingham joined them, and they left the house, widow Edlin continuing steadfast in her refusal to assist in the ceremony. "Where is the church?" said Sue. She had not lived there for any length of time since the old church was pulled down, and in her preoccupation forgot the new one. "Up here," said Phillotson, and presently the tower loomed large and solemn in the fog. The vicar had already crossed to the building, and when they entered he said pleasantly, "We almost want candles." "You do wish me to be yours, Richard?" gasped Sue in a whisper. "Certainly, dear, above all things in the world." Sue said no more, and for the second or third time he felt he was not quite following out the humane instinct which had induced him to let her go. There they stood, 5 altogether, the parson, the clerk, the couple, and Gillingham, and the holy ordinance was re-solemnized forthwith. In the nave of the edifice were 2 or 3 villagers, and when the clergyman came to the words, "What God hath joined," a woman's voice from among these was heard to utter audibly, "God hath joined indeed." It was like a re-enactment by the ghosts of their former selves of the similar scene which had taken place at Melchester years before. When the books were signed, the vicar congratulated the husband and wife on having performed a noble and righteous and mutually forgiving act. "All's well that ends well," he said, smiling. "May you long be happy together, after thus having been saved as by fire." They came down the nearly empty building and crossed to the schoolhouse. Gillingham wanted to get home that night and left early. He, too, congratulated the couple. "Now," he said, in parting from Phillotson, who walked out a little way, "I shall be able to tell the people in your native place a good round tale, and they'll all say, 'Well done,' depend on it." When the schoolmaster got back, Sue was making a pretence of doing some housewifery as if she lived there, but she seemed timid at his approach, and compunction wrought on him at sight of it. "Of course, my dear, I shan't expect to intrude upon your personal privacy any more than I did before," he said gravely. "It is for our good socially to do this, and that's its justification, if it was not my reason." Sue brightened a little. 6. The place was the door of Jude's lodging in the outskirts of Christminster, far from the precincts of St. Silas, where he had formerly lived, which saddened him to sickness. The rain was coming down. A woman in shabby black stood on his doorstep talking to Jude, who held the door in his hand. "I am lonely, destitute, and houseless, that's what I am. Father has turned me out of doors after borrowing every penny I'd got to put it into his business, and then accusing me of laziness when I was only waiting for a situation. I am at the mercy of the world. If you can't take me in and help me, Jude, I must go to the workhouse or to something worse. Only just now 2 undergraduates winked at me as I came along. 'Tis hard for a woman to keep virtuous where there's so many young men." The woman in the rain who spoke thus was Arabella, the evening being that of the day after Sue's remarriage with Phillotson. "I am sorry for you, but I am only in lodgings," said Jude coldly. "Then you turn me away?" "I'll give you enough to get food and lodging for a few days." "Oh, but can't you have the kindness to take me in? I cannot endure going to a public house to lodge, and I am so lonely. Please, Jude, for old time's sake." "No, no," said Jude hastily. "I don't want to be reminded of those things, and if you talk about them I shall not help you." "Then I suppose I must go," said Arabella. She bent her head against the doorpost and began sobbing. "The house is full," said Jude, "and I have only a little extra room to my own, not much more than a closet, where I keep my tools and templates and the few books I have left." "That would be a palace for me." "There's no bedstead in it." "A bit of a bed could be made on the floor. It would be good enough for me." Unable to be harsh with her, and not knowing what to do, Jude called the man who let the lodgings, and said this was an acquaintance of his in great distress for want of temporary shelter. "You may remember me as barmaid at the Lamb and Flag formerly," spoke up Arabella. "My father has insulted me this afternoon, and I have left him, though without a penny." The householder said he could not recall her features. "But still, if you are a friend of Mr. Fawley's, we'll do what we can for a day or 2, if he'll make himself answerable." "Yes, yes," said Jude. "She has really taken me quite unawares, but I should wish to help her out of her difficulty." And an arrangement was ultimately come to under which a bed was to be thrown down in Jude's lumber room, to make it comfortable for Arabella till she could get out of the strait she was in, not by her own fault, as she declared, and return to her father's again. While they were waiting for this to be done, Arabella said, "You know the news, I suppose?" "I guess what you mean, but I know nothing." "I had a letter from Annie at Alfriston today. She has just heard that the wedding was to be yesterday, but she didn't know if it had come off. I don't wish to talk of it." "No, no, of course you don't. It only shows what kind of woman—" "Don't speak of her, I say. She's a fool, and she's an angel too, poor dear." "If it's done, he'll have a chance of getting back to his old position by everybody's account, so Annie says. All his well-wishers will be pleased, including the bishop himself." "Do spare me, Arabella." Arabella was duly installed in the little attic, and at first she did not come near Jude at all. She went to and fro about her own business, which when they met for a moment on the stairs or in the passage, she informed him was that of obtaining another place in the occupation she understood best. When Jude suggested London as affording the most likely opening in the liquor trade, she shook her head. "No, the temptations are too many," she said. "Any humble tavern in the country before that for me." On the Sunday morning following, when he breakfasted later than on other days, she meekly asked him if she might come in to breakfast with him, as she had broken her teapot and could not replace it immediately, the shops being shut. "Yes, if you like," he said indifferently. While they sat without speaking, she suddenly observed, "You seem all in a brood, old man. I'm sorry for you." "I am all in a brood." "It is about her, I know. It's no business of mine, but I could find out all about the wedding, if it really did take place, if you wanted to know." "How could you?" "I wanted to go to Alfriston to get a few things I left there, and I could see Annie, who'll be sure to have heard all about it, as she has friends at Mary Green." Jude could not bear to acquiesce in this proposal, but his suspense pitted itself against his discretion and won in the struggle. "You can ask about it if you like," he said. "I've not heard a sound from there. It must have been very private if they have married." "I'm afraid I haven't enough cash to take me there and back, or I should have gone before. I must wait till I've earned some." "Oh, I can pay the journey for you," he said impatiently, and thus his suspense as to Sue's welfare and the possible marriage moved him to dispatch for intelligence the last emissary he would have thought of choosing deliberately. Arabella went, Jude requesting her to be home not later than by the 7 o'clock train. When she had gone, he said, "Why should I have charged her to be back by a particular time? She's nothing to me, nor the other one neither." But having finished work, he could not help going to the station to meet Arabella, dragged thither by feverish haste to get the news she might bring and know the worst. Arabella had made dimples most successfully all the way home, and when she stepped out of the railway carriage she smiled. He merely said, "Well," with the very reverse of a smile. "They are married." "Yes, of course they are," he returned. She observed, however, the hard strain upon his lip as he spoke. "Annie says she has heard from Belinda, her relation out at Mary Green, that it was very sad and curious." "How do you mean, sad? She wanted to marry him again, didn't she? And he her?" "Yes, that was it. She wanted to in one sense, but not in the other. Mrs. Edlin was much upset by it all and spoke out her mind at Phillotson, but Sue was that excited about it that she burned her best embroidery that she'd worn with you to blot you out entirely. Well, if a woman feels like it, she ought to do it. I commend her for it, though others don't." Arabella sighed. She felt he was her only husband, and that she belonged to nobody else in the sight of God Almighty while he lived. Perhaps another woman feels the same about herself too. Arabella sighed again. "I don't want any cant," exclaimed Jude. "It isn't cant," said Arabella. "I feel exactly the same as she." He closed that issue by remarking abruptly, "Well, now I know all I wanted to know. Many thanks for your information. I'm not going back to my lodgings just yet," and he left her straightway. In his misery and depression, Jude walked to well nigh every spot in the city that he had visited with Sue. Thence he did not know whither, and then thought of going home to his usual evening meal. But having all the vices of his virtues, and some to spare, he turned into a public house, for the first time during many months. Among the possible consequences of her marriage, Sue had not dwelt on this. Arabella, meanwhile, had gone back. The evening passed, and Jude did not return. At 9:30, Arabella herself went out, first proceeding to an outlying district near the river where her father lived and had opened a small and precarious pork shop lately. "Well," she said to him, "for all your rowing me that night, I've called in, for I've something to tell you. I think I shall get married and settled again, only you must help me, and you can do no less after what I've studied." "I'll do anything to get thee off my hands." "Very well. I'm now going to look for my young man. He's on the loose, I'm afraid, and I must get him home. All I want you to do tonight is not to fasten the door in case I should want to sleep here and should be late." "I thought you'd soon get tired of giving yourself airs and keeping away." "Well, don't do the door, that's all I say." She then sallied out again, and first hastening back to Jude's to make sure that he had not returned, began her search for him. A shrewd guess as to his probable course took her straight to the tavern which Jude had formerly frequented, and where she had been barmaid for a brief term. She had no sooner opened the door of the private bar than her eyes fell upon him, sitting in the shade at the back of the compartment, with his eyes fixed on the floor in a blank stare. He was drinking nothing stronger than ale just then. He did not observe her, and she entered and sat beside him. Jude looked up and said without surprise, "You've come to have something, Arabella? I'm trying to forget her, that's all. But I can't, and I'm going home." She saw that he was a little way on in liquor, but only a little as yet. "I've come entirely to look for you, dear boy. You are not well. Now you must have something better than that." Arabella held up her finger to the barmaid. "You shall have a liqueur. That's better fit for a man of education than beer. You shall have maraschino or curacao, dry or sweet, or cherry brandy. I'll treat you, poor chap." "I don't care which. Say cherry brandy. Sue has served me badly, very badly. I didn't expect it of Sue. I stuck to her, and she ought to have stuck to me. I'd have sold my soul for her sake, but she wouldn't risk hers a jot for me. To save her own soul she lets mine go damn. But it isn't her fault, poor little girl. I'm sure it isn't." How Arabella had obtained money did not appear, but she ordered a liqueur each and paid for them. When they had drunk these, Arabella suggested another, and Jude had the pleasure of being, as it were, personally conducted through the varieties of spirituous delectation by one who knew the landmarks well. Arabella kept very considerably in the rear of Jude, but though she only sipped where he drank, she took as much as she could safely take without losing her head, which was not a little, as the crimson upon her countenance showed. Her tone towards him tonight was uniformly soothing and cajoling, and whenever he said, "I don't care what happens to me," a thing he did continually, she replied, "But I do, very much." The closing hour came, and they were compelled to turn out, whereupon Arabella put her arm round his waist and guided his unsteady footsteps. When they were in the streets, she said, "I don't know what our landlord will say to my bringing you home in this state. I expect we are fastened out, so that he'll have to come down and let us in." I don't know. That's the worst of not having a home of your own. I tell you, Jude, what we had best do. Come round to my father's. I made it up with him a bit today. I can let you in, and nobody will see you at all, and by tomorrow morning you'll be all right." "Anything, anywhere," replied Jude. "What the devil does it matter to me?" They went along together, like any other fuddling couple, her arm still round his waist, and his at last round hers, though with no amatory intent, but merely because he was weary, unstable, and in need of support. "This is the martyr's burning place," he stammered, as they dragged across a broad street. "I remember, in old Fuller's holy state, I am reminded of it by our passing by here. Old Fuller, in his holy state, says that at the burning of Ridley, Dr. Smith preached sermon and took as his text, 'Though I give my body to be burned, and have not charity, it profiteth me nothing.' Often think of it as I pass here. Ridley was a—" "Yes, exactly. Very thoughtful of you, dearie, even though it hasn't much to do with our present business." "Why, yes, it has. I'm giving my body to be burned. But, you don't understand. It wants Sue to understand such things. And I was her seducer, poor little girl. And she's gone, and I don't care about myself. Do what you like with me. And yet she did it for conscience' sake, poor little Sue." "Hang her! I think she was right," hiccuped Arabella. "I've my feelings too, like her, and I feel I belong to you in heaven's eye and to nobody else, till death us do part. It is never too late to mend." They had reached her father's house, and she softly unfastened the door, groping about for a light within. The circumstances were not altogether unlike those of their entry into the cottage at Crescombe such a long time before. nor were perhaps Arabella's motives. But Jude did not think of that, though she did. "I can't find the matches, dear," she said when she had fastened up the door. "But never mind. This way. As quiet as you can, please." "It is as dark as pitch," said Jude. "Give me a hand and I'll lead you. That's it. Just sit down here and I'll pull off your boots. I don't want to wake him." "Who?" "Father. He'd make a row, perhaps." She pulled off his boots. "Now," she whispered, "take hold of me. Never mind your weight. Now, first stair, second stair." "But are we out in our old house by Mary Green?" asked the stupefied Jude. "I haven't been inside it for years till now. Hey, where are my books? That's what I want to know." "We're at my house, dear, where there's nobody to spy out how ill you are. Now, third stair, fourth stair, that's it. Now we shall get on." 7. Arabella was preparing breakfast in the downstairs back room of this small, recently hired tenement of her father's. She put her head into the little pork shop in front and told Mr. Don it was ready. Don, endeavouring to look like a master pork butcher, in a greasy blue blouse and with a strap round his waist from which a steel dangled, came in promptly. "You must mind the shop this morning," he said casually. "I've got to go and get some inwards and half a pig from Lumsden, and to call elsewhere. And if you live here you must put your shoulder to the wheel, at least till I get the business started." "Well, for today I can't." She looked deedily into his face. "I've got a prize upstairs." "Oh, what's that?" "A husband, almost." "No." "Yes, it's Jude. He's come back to me." "Your old original one? Well, I'm damned." "Well, I always did like him, that I will say." "But how does he come to be up there?" said Don, humour-struck, and nodding to the ceiling. "Don't ask inconvenient questions, father. What we've to do is to keep him here till he and I are as we were." "How was that?" "Married." "Ah. Well, it is the rummest thing I ever heard of, marrying an old husband again, with so much new blood in the world. He's no catch, to my thinking. I'd have had a new one while I was about it." "It isn't rum for a woman to want her old husband back for respectability, though for a man to want his old wife back, well, perhaps it is funny, rather." And Arabella was suddenly seized with a fit of loud laughter, in which her father joined more moderately. "Be civil to him, and I'll do the rest," she said, when she had recovered seriousness. "He told me this morning that his head ached fit to bust, and he hardly seemed to know where he was. No wonder, considering how he mixed his drink last night. We must keep him jolly and cheerful here for a day or two, and not let him go back to his lodging. Whatever you advance I'll pay back to you again, but I must go up and see how he is now, poor dearie." Arabella ascended the stairs, softly opened the door of the first bedroom, and peeped in. Finding that her shorn Samson was asleep, she entered to the bedside and stood regarding him. The fevered flush on his face from the debauch of the previous evening lessened the fragility of his ordinary appearance, and his long lashes, dark brows, and curly black hair and beard against the white pillow completed the physiognomy of one whom Arabella, as a woman of rank passion, still felt it worth while to recapture, highly important to recapture as a woman straitened both in means and in reputation. Her ardent gaze seemed to affect him. His quick breathing became suspended, and he opened his eyes. "How are you now, dear?" said she. "It is I, Arabella." "Ah, where? Oh, yes, I remember. You gave me shelter. I am stranded, ill, demoralized, damn bad, That's what I am." "Then do stay here. There's nobody in the house but father and me, and you can rest till you're thoroughly well. I'll tell them at the stoneworks that you are knocked up." "I wonder what they are thinking at the lodgings." "I'll go round and explain. Perhaps you'd better let me pay up, or they'll think we've run away." "Yes, you'll find money enough in my pocket there." Quite indifferent, and shutting his eyes because he could not bear the daylight in his throbbing eyeballs, Jude seemed to doze again. Arabella took his purse, softly left the room, and putting on her outdoor things, went off to the lodgings she and he had quitted the evening before. Scarcely half an hour had elapsed ere she reappeared round the corner, walking beside a lad wheeling a truck, on which were piled all Jude's household possessions, and also a few of Arabella's things, which she had taken to the lodgings for her short sojourn there. Jude was in such physical pain from his unfortunate breakdown of the previous night, and in such mental pain from the loss of Sue, and from having yielded in his half-somnolent state to Arabella, that when he saw his few chattels unpacked and standing before his eyes in this strange bedroom, intermixed with woman's apparel, he scarcely considered how they had come there, or what their coming signalized. "Now," said Arabella to her father downstairs, "we must keep plenty of good liquor going in the house these next few days. I know his nature, and if he once gets into that fearfully low state that he does get into sometimes, he'll never do the honourable thing by me in this world, and I shall be left in the lurch. He must be kept cheerful. He has a little money in the savings bank, and he has given me his purse to pay for anything necessary. Well, that will be the licence, for I must have that ready at hand to catch him the moment he's in the humour. You must pay for the liquor. A few friends and a quiet convivial party would be the thing, if we could get it up. It would advertise the shop, and help me too. That can be got up easy enough by anybody who'll afford victuals and drink. Ah, yes, it would advertise the shop, that's true." 3 days later, when Jude had recovered somewhat from the fearful throbbing of his eyes and brain, but was still considerably confused in his mind by what had been supplied to him by Arabella during the interval, to keep him jolly, as she expressed it, the quiet convivial gathering, suggested by her to wind Jude up to the striking point, took place. Don had only just opened his miserable little pork and sausage shop, which had as yet scarce any customers. Nevertheless, the party advertised it well, and the Dons acquired a real notoriety among a certain class in Christminster who knew not the colleges, nor their works, nor their ways. Don had only just opened his miserable little pork and sausage shop, which had as yet scarce any customers. Nevertheless, that party advertised it well, and the Dons acquired a real notoriety among a certain class in Christminster who knew not the colleges, nor their works, nor their ways. Jude was asked if he could suggest any guests in addition to those named by Arabella and her father, and in a saturnine humour of perfect recklessness mentioned Uncle Joe and Stagg and the decayed auctioneer, and others whom he remembered as having been frequenters of the well-known tavern during his bout therein years before. He also suggested Freckles and Bower o' Bliss. Arabella took him at his word so far as the men went, but drew the line at the ladies. Another man they knew, Tinker Taylor, though he lived in the same street, was not invited, but as he went homeward from a late job on the evening of the party, he had occasion to call at the shop for trotters. There were none in, but he was promised some the next morning. While making his inquiry, Taylor glanced into the back room, and saw the guests sitting round, card-playing and drinking, and otherwise enjoying themselves at Don's expense. He went home to bed, and on his way out next morning wondered how the party went off. He thought it hardly worth while to call at the shop for his provisions at that hour, Don and his daughter being probably not up, if they caroused late the night before. However, He found in passing that the door was open, and he could hear voices within, though the shutters of the meat stall were not down. He went and tapped at the sitting-room door, and opened it. "Well, to be sure," he said, astonished. Hosts and guests were sitting card-playing, smoking, and talking precisely as he had left them 11 hours earlier. The gas was burning, and the curtains drawn, though it had been broad daylight for 2 hours out of doors. "Yes," cried Arabella, laughing, "here we are, just the same. We ought to be ashamed of ourselves, oughtn't we? But it is a sort of house-warming, you see, and our friends are in no hurry. Come in, Mr. Taylor, and sit down." The tinker, or rather reduced ironmonger, was nothing loath, and entered and took a seat. "I shall lose a quarter, but never mind," he said. Well, really, I couldn't hardly believe my eyes when I looked in. It seemed as if I was flung back again into last night all of a sudden. "So you are. Pour out for Mr. Taylor." He now perceived that she was sitting beside Jude, her arm being round his waist. Jude, like the rest of the company, bore on his face the signs of how deeply he had been indulging. "Well, we've been waiting for certain legal hours to arrive, to tell the truth," she continued bashfully, and making her spirituous crimson look as much like a maiden blush as possible. "Jude and I have decided to make up matters between us by tying the knot again, as we find we can't do without one another after all. So as a bright notion we agreed to sit on till it was late enough and go and do it off-hand." Jude seemed to pay no great heed at what she was announcing, or indeed to anything whatever. The entrance of Taylor infused fresh spirit into the company, and they remained sitting till Arabella whispered to her father, "Now we may as well go." "But the parson don't know?" "Yes, I told him last night that we might come between 8 and 9, as there were reasons of decency for doing it as early and quiet as possible, on account of it being our second marriage, which might make people curious to look on if they knew. He highly approved." "Oh, very well. I'm ready," said her father, getting up and shaking himself. "Now, old darling," she said to Jude, "come along, as you promised." "When did I promise anything?" asked he, whom she had made so tipsy by her special knowledge of that line of business as almost to have made him sober again, or to seem so to those who did not know him. "Why," said Arabella, affecting dismay, "you've promised to marry me several times as we sat here tonight. These gentlemen have heard you." "I don't remember it," said Jude doggedly. "There's only one woman, but I won't mention her in this Capharnaum." Arabella looked towards her father. "Now, Mr. Fawley, be honourable," said Don. "You and my daughter have been living here together these 3 or 4 days, quite on the understanding that you were going to marry her. Of course I shouldn't have had such goings-on in my house if I hadn't understood that. As a point of honour you must do it now." "Don't say anything against my honour," enjoined Jude hotly, standing up. "I'd marry the whore of Babylon rather than do anything dishonourable. No reflection on you, my dear. It is a mere rhetorical figure, what they call in the books hyperbole." "Keep your figures for your debts to friends who shelter you," said Don. "If I am bound in honour to marry her, as I suppose I am, though how I came to be here with her I know no more than a dead man, marry her I will, so help me God. I have never behaved dishonourably to a woman, or to any living thing. I am not a man who wants to save himself at the expense of the weaker among us." "There, never mind him, dearie," said she, patting her cheek against Jude's. "Come up and wash your face, and just put yourself tidy, and off we'll go. Make it up with father." They shook hands. Jude went upstairs with her, and soon came down looking tidy and calm. Arabella, too, had hastily arranged herself, and accompanied by Don, away they went. "Don't go," she said to the guests at parting. I've told the little maid to get the breakfast while we are gone, and when we come back we'll all have some. A good strong cup of tea will set everybody right for going home." When Arabella, Jude, and Don had disappeared on their matrimonial errand, the assembled guests yawned themselves wider awake and discussed the situation with great interest. Tinker Tailor, being the most sober, reasoned the most lucidly. "I don't wish to speak against friends," he said, "but it do seem a rare curiosity for a couple to marry over again. If they couldn't get on the first time when their minds were limp, they won't the second, by my reckoning. Do you think he'll do it?" "He's been put upon his honour by the woman, so he mad." "He'd hardly do it straight off like this. He's got no licence nor anything." "She's got that, bless you. Didn't you hear her say so to her father?" "Well," said Tinker Tailor, relighting his pipe at the gas jet, "take her altogether, limb by limb, she's not such a bad-looking piece, particularly by candlelight. To be sure, halfpence that have been in circulation can't be expected to look like new ones from the mint. But for a woman that's been knocking about the 4 hemispheres for some time, she's passable enough. A little bit thick in the flitch, perhaps, but I like a woman that a puff of wind won't blow down." Their eyes followed the movements of the little girl as she spread the breakfast cloth on the table they had been using, without wiping up the slops of the liquor. The curtains were undrawn, and the expression of the house made to look like morning. Some of the guests, however, fell asleep in their chairs. One or two went to the door and gazed along the street more than once. Tinker Tailor was the chief of these, and after a time he came in with a leer on his face. "By gad, they are coming! I think the deed's done." "No," said Uncle Joe, following him in. "Take my word, he turned rusty at the last minute. They're walking in a very unusual way, and that's the meaning of it." They waited in silence till the wedding party could be heard entering the house. First into the room came Arabella, boisterously, and her face was enough to show that her strategy had succeeded. "Mrs. Fawley, I presume?" said Tinker Tailor, with mock courtesy. "Certainly, Mrs. Fawley again," replied Arabella blandly, pulling off her glove and holding out her left hand. "There's the padlock, see? Well, he was very nice, gentlemanly man indeed. I mean the clergyman. He said to me as gentle as a babe when all was done, 'Mrs. Fawley, I congratulate you heartily,' he says, 'for having heard your history and that of your husband. I think you have both done the right and proper thing. And for your past errors as a wife and his as a husband, I think you ought now to be forgiven by the world, as you have forgiven each other,' says he. Yes, he was a very nice, gentlemanly man. The Church don't recognise divorce in her dogma, strictly speaking, he says, and bear in mind the words of the service in your goings out and your comings in. What God hath joined together let no man put asunder. Yes, he was very nice, gentlemanly man. But Jude, my dear, you were enough to make a cat laugh. You walked that straight and held yourself that steady that one would have thought you were going apprentice to a judge, though I knew you were seeing double all the time from the way you fumbled with my finger. I said I'd do anything to save a woman's honour, muttered Jude, and I've done it. Well now, old dearie, come along and have some breakfast. I want some more whiskey, said Jude stolidly. Nonsense, dear, not now. There's no more left. The tea will take the muddle out of our heads, and we shall be as fresh as larks. All right. I've married you. She said I ought to marry you again, and I have, straightway. It is true religion, ha ha ha. 8. Michaelmas came and passed, and Jude and his wife, who had lived but a short time in her father's house after their remarriage, were in lodgings on the top floor of a dwelling nearer to the centre of the city. He had done a few days' work during the 2 or 3 months since the event, but his health had been indifferent, and it was now precarious. He was sitting in an arm-chair before the fire, and coughed a good deal. "I've got a bargain for my trouble in marrying thee over again," Arabella was saying to him. "I shall have to keep 'ee entirely, that's what 'twill come to. I shall have to make black pot and sausages and hawk 'em about the street, all to support an invalid husband I'd no business to be saddled with at all. Why didn't you keep your health deceiving one like this? You were well enough when the wedding was." "Ah, yes," said he, laughing acridly. "I have been thinking of my foolish feeling about the pig you and I killed during our first marriage. I feel now that the greatest mercy that could be vouchsafed to me would be that something should serve me as I served that animal." This was the sort of discourse that went on between them every day now. The landlord of the lodging, who had heard that they were a queer couple, had doubted if they were married at all, especially as he had seen Arabella kiss Jude one evening when she had taken a little cordial, and he was about to give them notice to quit, till by chance, overhearing her one night haranguing Jude in rattling terms, and ultimately flinging a shoe at his head, he recognized the note of genuine wedlock, and concluding that they must be respectable, said no more. Jude did not get any better, and one day he requested Arabella, with considerable hesitation, to execute a commission for him. She asked him indifferently what it was. "To write to Sue." "What in the name do you want me to write to her for?" "To ask how she is, and if she'll come to see me, because I'm ill, and should like to see her once again." "It is like you to insult a lawful wife by asking such a thing." "It is just in order not to insult you that I ask you to do it. You know I love Sue. I don't wish to mince the matter. There stands the fact. I love her. I could find a dozen ways of sending a letter to her without your knowledge, but I wish to be quite above board with you and with her husband. A message through you asking her to come is at least free from any odour of intrigue. If she retains any of her old nature at all, she'll come. You've no respect for marriage whatever, or its rights and duties." "What does it matter what my opinions are, a wretch like me? Can it matter to anybody in the world who comes to see me for half an hour, here with one foot in the grave? Come, please write, Arabella," he pleaded. "Repay my candour by a little generosity." "I should think not." "Not just once? Oh, do." He felt that his physical weakness had taken away all his dignity. "What do you want her to know how you are for? She don't want to see 'ee. She's the rat that forsook the sinking ship. Don't, don't. And I stuck to 'un, the more fool I. Have that strumpet in the house, indeed." Almost as soon as the words were spoken, Jude sprang from the chair, and before Arabella knew where she was, he had her on her back upon a little couch which stood there, he kneeling above her. "Say another word of that sort," he whispered, "and I'll kill you, here and now. I've everything to gain by it, my own death not being the least part, so don't think there's no meaning in what I say." "What do you want me to do?" gasped Arabella. "Promise never to speak of her." "Very well, I do." "I take your word," he said scornfully as he loosened her. "But what it's worth I can't say." "You couldn't kill the pig, but you could kill me." "Ah, there you have me. No, I couldn't kill you, even in a passion. Taunt away." He then began coughing very much, and she estimated his life with an appraiser's eye as he sank back ghastly pale. "I'll send for her," Arabella murmured, "if you'll agree to my being in the room with you all the time she's here." The softer side of his nature, the desire to see Sue, made him unable to resist the offer even now, provoked as he had been, and he replied breathlessly, "Yes, I agree. Only send for her." In the evening he inquired if she had written. "Yes," she said. "I wrote a note telling her you were ill and asking her to come tomorrow or the day after. I haven't posted it yet." The next day Jude wondered if she really did post it, but would not ask her, and foolish hope that lives on a drop and a crumb made him restless with expectation. He knew the times of the possible trains, and listened on each occasion for sounds of her. She did not come, but Jude would not address Arabella again thereon. He hoped and expected all the next day, but no Sue appeared, neither was there any note of reply. Then Jude decided in the privacy of his mind that Arabella had never posted hers, although she had written it. There was something in her manner which told it. His physical weakness was such that he shed tears at the disappointment when she was not there to see. His suspicions were, in fact, well founded. Arabella, like some other nurses, thought that your duty towards your invalid was to pacify him by any means short of really acting upon his fancies. He never said another word to her about his wish or his conjecture. A silent, undiscerned resolve grew up in him, which gave him, if not strength, stability and calm. One midday, when after an absence of 2 hours she came into the room, she beheld the chair empty. Down she flopped on the bed, and sitting, meditated. "Now where the devil is my man gone to?" she said. A driving rain from the northeast had been falling with more or less intermission all the morning, and looking from the window at the dripping spouts, it seemed impossible to believe that any sick man would have ventured out to almost certain death. Yet a conviction possessed Arabella that he had gone out, and it became a certainty when she had searched the house. "If he's such a fool, let him be," said she. "I can do no more." Jude was at that moment in a railway train that was drawing near to Alfredston, oddly swathed, pale as a monumental figure in alabaster, and much stared at by other passengers. An hour later, his thin form, in the long great-coat and blanket he had come with, but without an umbrella, could have been seen walking along the 5-mile road to Marygreen. On his face showed the determined purpose that alone sustained him, but to which his weakness afforded a sorry foundation. By the uphill walk he was quite blown, but he pressed on, and at 3:30 o'clock stood by the familiar well at Marygreen. The rain was keeping everybody indoors. Jude crossed the green to the church without observation, and found the building open. Here he stood, looking forth at the school, whence he could hear the usual sing-song tones of the little voices that had not learnt creation's groan. He waited till a small boy came from the school, one evidently allowed out before hours for some reason or other. Jude held up his hand, and the child came. "Please call at the schoolhouse, and ask Mrs. Phillotson if she will be kind enough to come to the church for a few minutes." The child departed, and Jude heard him knock at the door of the dwelling. He himself went further into the church. Everything was new, except a few pieces of carving preserved from the wrecked old fabric, now fixed against the new walls. He stood by these. They seemed akin to the perished people of that place who were his ancestors and Sue's. A light footstep, which might have been accounted no more than an added drip to the rainfall, sounded in the porch, and he looked round. "Oh, I didn't think it was you. I didn't. Oh, Jude!" A hysterical catch in her breath ended in a succession of them. He advanced, but she quickly recovered and went back. "Don't go, don't go," he implored. "This is my last time. I thought it would be less intrusive than to enter your house, and I shall never come again. Don't then be unmerciful. Sue, Sue, We are acting by the letter, and the letter killeth. I'll stay. I won't be unkind, she said, her mouth quivering and her tears flowing as she allowed him to come closer. But why did you come and do this wrong thing, after doing such a right thing as you have done? What right thing? Marrying Arabella again. It was in the Alfredston paper. She has never been other than yours, Jude, in the proper sense, and therefore you did so well, oh, so well, in recognizing it and taking her to you again. God above, is that all I've come to hear? If there is anything more degrading, immoral, unnatural than another in my life, it is this meretricious contract with Arabella, which has been called doing the right thing. And you, too, you call yourself Philipson's wife. His wife. You are mine. Don't make me rush away from you. I can't bear much, but on this point I am decided. I cannot understand how you did it, how you think it, I cannot. Never mind that. He is a kind husband to me, and I've wrestled and struggled and fasted and prayed. I've nearly brought my body into complete subjection, and you mustn't, will you, wake? Oh, you darling little fool, where is your reason? You seem to have suffered the loss of your faculties. I would argue with you if I didn't know that a woman in your state of feeling is quite beyond all appeals to her brains. Or is it that you are humbugging yourself, as so many women do about these things, and don't actually believe what you pretend to, and are only indulging in the luxury of the emotion raised by an affected belief? Luxury? How can you be so cruel? You dear, sad, soft, most melancholy wreck of a promising human intellect that it has ever been my lot to behold, where is your scorn of convention gone? I would have died game. You crushed, almost insult me, Jude. Go away from me. She turned off quickly. I will. I would never come to see you again, even if I had the strength to come, which I shall not have any more. Sue, you are not worth a man's love. Her bosom began to go up and down. I can't endure you to say that, she burst out, and her eye resting on him a moment, she turned back impulsively. Don't scorn me. Kiss me, oh, kiss me lots of times, and say I am not a coward and a contemptible humbug. I can't bear it. She rushed up to him, and with her mouth on his continued, I must tell you. Oh, I must, my darling love. It has been only a church marriage, an apparent marriage, I mean. He suggested it at the very first. How? I mean it is a nominal marriage only. It hasn't been more than that at all since I came back to him. Sue, he said. Pressing her to him in his arms, he bruised her lips with kisses. If misery can know happiness, I have a moment's happiness now. Now, in the name of all you hold holy, tell me the truth and no lie. You do love me still? I do. You know it too well. But I mustn't do this. I mustn't kiss you back as I would. But do. And yet you are so dear, and you look so ill. And so do you. There's one more, in memory of our dead little children, yours and mine. The words struck her like a blow, and she bent her head. I mustn't. I can't go on with this, she gasped presently. But there, darling, I give you back your kisses. I do. And now I'll hate myself forever for my sin. No, let me make my last appeal. Listen to this. We've both remarried out of our senses. I was made drunk to do it. You were the same. I was gin drunk. You were creed drunk. Either form of intoxication takes away the nobler vision. Let us then shake off our mistakes and run away together. No. Again, no. Why do you tempt me so far, Jude? It is too merciless. But I've got over myself now. Don't follow me. Don't look at me. Leave me, for pity's sake." She ran up the church to the east end, and Jude did as she requested. He did not turn his head, but took up his blanket, which she had not seen, and went straight out. As he passed the end of the church, she heard his coughs mingling with the rain on the windows, and in a last instinct of human affection, even now unsubdued by her fetters, she sprang up as if to go and succour him. But she knelt down again, and stopped her ears with her hands, till all possible sound of him had passed away. He was by this time at the corner of the green, from which the path ran across the fields in which he had scared rooks as a boy. He turned and looked back once at the building which still contained Sue, and then went on, knowing that his eyes would light on that scene no more. There are cold spots up and down Wessex in autumn and winter weather, but the coldest of all, when a north or east wind is blowing, is the crest of the down by the Brown House, where the road to Alfredston crosses the old Ridgeway. Here the first winter sleets and snows fall and lie, and here the spring frost lingers last unthawed. Here, in the teeth of the north-east wind and rain, Jude now pursued his way, wet through, the necessary slowness of his walk from lack of his former strength being insufficient to maintain his heat. He came to the milestone, and raining as it was, spread his blanket and lay down there to rest. Before moving on, he went and felt at the back of the stone for his own carving. It was still there, but nearly obliterated by moss. He passed the spot where the gibbet of his ancestor Aunt Sue's had stood, and descended the hill. It was dark when he reached Alfredston, where he had a cup of tea, the deadly chill that began to creep into his bones being too much for him to endure fasting. To get home he had to travel by a steam tram-car and 2 branches of railway, with much waiting at a junction. He did not reach Christminster till 10 o'clock. 9. On the platform stood Arabella. She looked him up and down. "You've been to see her?" she asked. "I have," said Jude, literally tottering with cold and lassitude. "Well, now you'd best march along home." The water ran out of him as he went, and he was compelled to lean against the wall to support himself while coughing. "You've done for yourself by this, young man," said she. "I don't know whether you know it." "Of course I do. I meant to do for myself." "What, to commit suicide?" "Certainly." "Well, I'm blessed. Kill yourself for a woman." "Listen to me, Arabella. You think you are the stronger, and so you are in a physical sense now. You could push me over like a 9-pin. You did not send that letter the other day, and I could not resent your conduct, but I am not so weak in another way as you think. I made up my mind that a man confined to his room by inflammation of the lungs, a fellow who had only 2 wishes left in the world, to see a particular woman and then to die, could neatly accomplish those 2 wishes at one stroke by taking this journey in the rain. That I've done. I have seen her for the last time, and I've finished myself, put an end to a feverish life which ought never to have begun. Lord, you do talk lofty. Won't you have something warm to drink?" "No, thank you. Let's get home." They went along by the silent colleges, and Jude kept stopping. "What are you looking at?" "Stupid fancies. I see, in a way, those spirits of the dead again, on this, my last walk, that I saw when I first walked here." "What a curious chap you are." "I seem to see them, and almost hear them rustling, but I don't revere all of them as I did then. I don't believe in half of them. The theologians, the apologists, and their kin the metaphysicians, The high-handed statesmen and others no longer interest me. All that has been spoilt for me by the grind of stern reality. The expression of Jude's corpse-like face in the watery lamplight was indeed as if he saw people where there was nobody. At moments he stood still by an archway, like one watching a figure walk out. Then he would look at a window, like one discerning a familiar face behind it. He seemed to hear voices, whose words he repeated as if to gather their meaning. "They seem laughing at me." "Who?" "Oh, I was talking to myself. The phantoms all about here, in the college archways and windows. They used to look friendly in the old days, particularly Addison and Gibbon and Johnson and Dr. Brown and Bishop Kent. Come along, do. Phantoms. There's neither living nor dead hereabouts except a damn policeman. I never saw the streets emptier. Fancy, the poet of liberty used to walk here, and the great dissector of melancholy there. I don't want to hear about 'em. They bore me. Walter Raleigh is beckoning to me from that lane. Wycliffe, Harvey, Hooker, Arnold, and a whole crowd of Tractarian shades. I don't want to know their names, I tell you. What do I care about folk dead and gone? Upon my soul, you are more sober when you've been drinking than when you have not." "I must rest a moment," he said, and as he paused, holding to the railings, he measured with his eye the height of a college front. "This is old Rubric, and that Sarcophagus, and up that lane Crozier and Tudor, and all down there is Cardinal, with its long front, and its windows with lifted eyebrows, representing the polite surprise of the university at the efforts of such as I. Come along, and I'll treat you." "Very well. It will help me home, for I feel the chilly fog from the meadows of Cardinal as if death claws were grabbing me through and through. As Antigone said, I am neither a dweller among men nor ghosts. But, Arabella, when I'm dead you'll see my spirit flitting up and down here among these." "Pooh, you mayn't die after all. You're tough enough yet, old man." It was night at Mary Green, and the rain of the afternoon showed no sign of abatement. About the time at which Jude and Arabella were walking the streets of Christminster homeward, the widow Edlin crossed the green and opened the back door of the schoolmaster's dwelling, which she did often now before bedtime to assist Sue in putting things away. Sue was muddling helplessly in the kitchen, for she was not a good housewife, though she tried to be, and grew impatient of domestic details. "Lord lovey, what do you do that yourself for when I've come a purpose? You knew I should come." "Oh, I don't know. I forgot." "No, I didn't forget. I did it to discipline myself. I have scrubbed the stairs since 8 o'clock. I must practice myself in my household duties. I've shamefully neglected them." "Why should ye? You'll get a better school, perhaps be a parson in time, and you'll keep 2 servants. 'Tis a pity to spoil them pretty hands." "Don't talk of my pretty hands, Mrs. Edlin. This pretty body of mine has been the ruin of me already." "Shoo, you've got no body to speak of. You put me more in mind of a spirit. But there seems something wrong tonight, my dear. Husband cross?" "No, he never is. He's gone to bed early." "Then what is it?" "I cannot tell you. I have done wrong today, and I want to eradicate it. Well, I will tell you this. Jude has been here this afternoon, and I find I still love him. Oh, grossly. I cannot tell you more." "Ah," said the widow, "I told 'ee how 'twould be. But it shan't be. I have not told my husband of his visit. It is not necessary to trouble him about it, as I never mean to see Jude any more. But I am going to make my conscience right on my duty to Richard, by doing a penance, the ultimate thing. I must." I wouldn't, since he agrees to it being otherwise, and it has gone on 3 months very well as it is. Yes, he agrees to my living as I choose, but I feel it is an indulgence I ought not to exact from him. It ought not to have been accepted by me. To reverse it will be terrible, but I must be more just to him. Oh, why was I so unheroic? What is it you don't like in him? Asked Mrs. Edlin, curiously. I cannot tell you. It is something I cannot say. The mournful thing is that nobody would admit it as a reason for feeling as I do, so that no excuse is left me. Did you ever tell Jude what it was? Never. I've heard strange tales of husbands in my time, observed the widow in a lowered voice. They say that when the saints were upon the earth, devils used to take husbands' form o' nights and get poor women into all sorts of trouble. But I don't know why that should come into my head, for it's only a tale. What a wind and rain it is tonight. Well, don't be in a hurry to alter things, my dear. Think it over. No, no. I've screwed my weak soul up to treating him more courteously, and it must be now, at once, before I break down. I don't think you ought to force your nature. No woman ought to be expected to. It is my duty. I will drink my cup to the dregs. Half an hour later, when Mrs. Edlin put on her bonnet and shawl to leave, Sue seemed to be seized with vague terror. No, no, don't go, Mrs. Edlin, she implored, her eyes enlarged, and with a quick, nervous look over her shoulder. But it is bedtime, child. Yes, but there's a little spare room, my room that was. It is quite ready. Please stay, Mrs. Edlin. I shall want you in the morning. Oh, well, I don't mind if you wish. Nothing will happen to my 4 old walls, whether I be there or no. Then she fastened up the doors, and they ascended the stairs together. Wait here, Mrs. Edlin, said Sue. I'll go into my old room a moment by myself. Leaving the widow on the landing, Sue turned to the chamber which had been hers exclusively since her arrival at Mary Green, and pushing to the door, knelt down by the bed for a minute or two. She then arose, and taking her nightgown from the pillow, undressed and came out to Mrs. Edlin. A man could be heard snoring in the room opposite. She wished Mrs. Edlin good night, and the widow entered the room that Sue had just vacated. Sue unlatched the other chamber door, and as if seized with faintness, sank down outside it. Getting up again, she half opened the door and said, "Richard." As the word came out of her mouth, she visibly shuddered. The snoring had quite ceased for some time, but he did not reply. Sue seemed relieved, and hurried back to Mrs. Edlin's chamber. "Are you in bed, Mrs. Edlin?" she asked. "No, dear," said the widow, opening the door. "I be old and slow, and it takes me a long while to unray. I hadn't unlaced my jumps yet." "I don't hear him, and perhaps... "What, child?" "Perhaps he's dead," she gasped, "and then I should be free, and I could go to Jude. Ah, no, I forgot her, and God. Let's go and hearken. No, he's snoring again, but the rain and the wind is so loud that you can hardly hear anything but between whiles." Sue had dragged herself back. "Mrs. Edlin, good night again. I'm sorry I called you out." The widow retreated a second time. The strained, resigned look returned to Sue's face when she was alone. "I must do it. I must drink to the dregs," she whispered. "Richard," she said again. "Hey, what? Is that you, Susanna?" "Yes." "What do you want? Anything the matter? Wait a moment." He pulled on some articles of clothing and came to the door. "Yes." When we were at Shaston I jumped out of the window rather than that you should come near me.